The Odin Lite I had ordered back in early May finally arrived, and I had a week to use it. I've got a few minor concerns, but overall it's been a great device. The specs on the device are quite promising, and the performance so far is unmatched at this price range compared to every other handheld I've used so far. This is my initial impressions of the Odin Lite. Let's take a look. As I've never used any Odin device before, I wanted to first take a look at the ergonomics of the device and see how it compares to the similar Switch Lite. On the back here we have some slight grips on the edges which make it very comfortable to hold. My only complaint is I wish they extended a little further back to give you more of a grip. The grips themselves do make the device a lot more comfortable than I first imagined, especially compared to something flat like the Switch Lite, which has no grips on the back. The Switch Lite by comparison also has flat edges on the sides, making it a slightly uncomfortable device. If we hold the Odin Lite up here beside it, you can see the drastic differences in ergonomics between these two devices. Another big difference you'll notice when I have these two devices side by side like this is the very recessed joysticks on the Odin. Before we jump in further, let's power up the device and see how long it takes to start up. A little over 20 seconds, which is really good, and I have to say I'm impressed. The UFS 2.1 storage is really making a difference here when it comes to loading and startup times. I did a quick benchmark of the internal storage, and with over 600 megabytes per second reads and 200 megabytes per second writes, I don't think people are going to be disappointed. One thing I think a lot of people are going to have a problem with is these joysticks though. The joysticks themselves sit nearly flush with the device and make games very hard to play or enjoy. This is probably just a personal thing, as I have a friend who really likes these recessed joysticks. I just prefer the ones that stick out a little bit more so you get a little bit more range of motion for games. This joystick is by far the worst joystick I've seen in a device, and I'm finding quite the adjustment period while using it. The joystick sits so low that it looks like they're nearly hitting the edges of the opening here. I still can't play any shooters or fast-paced games that require more precision due to how hard these are to use. I might take a look at doing some mods on these in the future so I can enjoy using the device a bit more. The triggers on the other hand are excellent, and I love what they've done here with the design on these. The triggers have a good range of movement to them. They're also analog triggers, so they're great for racing games or streaming content that requires it. The bumpers have a nice click to them, which isn't too loud or soft, so I feel like they worked hard to find a happy medium. The triggers do collect dust though, or fingerprints, as they have a semi-gloss coating to them. All in all, excellent job on these. They definitely feel better than something like on the Switch Lite. The D-pad has a subtle click to it, and overall it's an excellent D-pad. The plastic on this feels extremely durable, and the build quality on the buttons, triggers, and D-pad is absolutely fantastic. Speaking of the face buttons, they have a good amount of travel to them, and these are by far the best buttons I've seen on a gaming handheld, next to maybe the 351MP from Anbernic. The plastic quality on the device here is very durable, but I'm not sure if it's the transparent model, but I feel like it's more fragile than something like the Switch Lite. Not to say that this build on this device isn't durable, as it does feel solid overall compared to most typical handhelds I've seen. I can only speak for the transparent model I have here, but the plastic has a slight texture to it. The texture itself does add a bit more grip to the device, making it more comfortable to hold. The plastic has a slightly hollow sound to it, but as mentioned, it does feel really sturdy, and the build quality far exceeds my expectations. The only thing I'm really not a fan of the build quality wise is this area around the fan here. Kinda makes the back part look cheap because the grill around it's visible. The little A sticker inside the device isn't something I'm also a big fan of, and I'll probably open it up and take that off before long. Darkening the lighting here a bit lets you see the panel a bit better, and you can see the device does support 4K content on YouTube. It also supports HDR via YouTube, but the quality isn't the greatest as far as HDR content is concerned. As the company changed this panel out, the customers who ordered this device were really concerned and worried that they were going to get a sub-quality panel compared to the original, or that the color was off on this newer revision. There are also some reports of the panel looking more bluish compared to the original warmer toned screen, which had a lot of people worried. So far from my testing, every color on this panel is very saturated and accurate. Colors look rich and vibrant, and the screen I have here does not seem to suffer from any dead pixels, light bleed, or screen bruises. This is also a true 60Hz panel, not the 61Hz panel that I used on the original. So far I have yet to notice any stuttering or tearing in games or video. There is also no banding in the colors on the screen, dirty screen effect, or gray uniformity issues from what I can see. The gamma seems to be slightly off from ideal, but that doesn't seem to affect the colors or the panel in any way. The screen having issues was a big concern of mine when I read a lot of the reports and the updates, but I'm glad to see that the screen so far has been excellent. This panel, however, does not support a wide color gamut, which is present in most budget flagship phones like the Poco F3. This being a much cheaper device, I'm not surprised here, and it doesn't affect the quality of the gaming experience on the device. The touch responsiveness of the screen does seem excellent, but I did notice one part of the top right corner wouldn't register all the time, at least when pressed directly. I think this is due to the fact that it's trying to bring out the side menu here on the device. Checking over some of the games I played on it so far, Game Boy works great, but it does have some big black bars on the side, which you can use with some bezels if you want. Sega Mega Drive also seems to have a little bit of a black bezel around the edge, but that's just due to the aspect ratio of the screen. Doesn't seem to bother me in games. You can use the widescreen hack on Mega Drive here, but it does seem to produce some visual glitching on certain games like you're seeing here with Sonic. Other games work nearly perfect with the widescreen hack on, and it looks absolutely fantastic. N64 works smoothly, but the controls here were a little wonky, so I have to go back and configure them correctly. Nintendo DS works great, and the enhancements can be turned on without any visual glitching or stuttering thanks to the powerful hardware. One of the older systems that works and looks great on this device is Game Boy Advance. PSP also runs great and fills out the screen well. Dreamcast was the biggest reason I bought the Odin Lite, and it runs flawless up to 1440p with anti-aliasing in the games I tested. Not every game on Dreamcast supports widescreen hacks, as you can see, but when it works, it fills out the screen quite nicely. It's definitely going to be a blast to revisit some old favorites on the go and find some new classics I missed growing up. I was running 3DS at 2x resolution, but the hardware had a lot more overhead in some games, so you could turn that up if you wanted a sharper game. Native Android gaming, like here on Forgotten Anne, really makes this new panel shine, and it shows the absolutely beautifully rich colors here especially. Fast-paced games like Real Racing work well with the controller, and the device handles it flawlessly without the need to turn up the performance modes past standard. Other Android titles with controller support I've tested all worked great right outside the box. Moonlight was a bit of an odd one, as the HEVC codec worked well most of the time over Wi-Fi 6. The joysticks made it near impossible to do any sort of complicated aiming in a game like Ghostwire Tokyo, and I found myself being unable to play it. The network latency was extremely low most of the time, and the hardware decoding latency was also extremely decent, being under 10 milliseconds. I think the biggest issue here is those joysticks making streaming impossible for me to enjoy on a modern title. Older titles and indies work well on streaming most of the time, provided they didn't run into any issues with the network latency. I ran into a lot of issues with responsiveness using the standard Moonlight AVC encoder, but provided you didn't need any precise input, it worked well enough for me in most cases. Both HEVC and AVC were tested with Wi-Fi 6 with a constant 1.2 GB per second connection. Internet speed tests show my connection getting between 500 and 600 megabytes per second, which is a little bit less than the 1 gigabyte per second, which I'm paying for here. This is also with the adapter reporting 1.2 gigabytes per second connection speed still. The Wi-Fi range is incredible, and even across my house, I'm still getting a 350 megabytes per second connection speed over 5 gigahertz. Watch the network latency as I walk off the cliff here unintentionally in Ori in the Blind Forest. This remains one of the biggest complaints I have with streaming so far on this device. Randomly having your network latency spike isn't ideal. I'll have to investigate this further, but so far I'm unable to produce this issue on any other Android device. Here's the Slingshot benchmark from 3D Mark. Overall pretty impressive for running a standard performance mode. The Wildlife benchmark also ran smoothly, and the device managed to keep itself cool during the entire run. Let's do a quick audio test between the two audio modes on the Odin Lite. Even before my audio recording I just finished up, I actually had the right speaker totally die on me randomly, turned it on, no audio out of the right speaker. I shut it off and left it for a day, came back the next day, both speakers were not working. After turning it off and on one more time, I have yet to have any more speaker issues, but that was a big scare right after getting a new device. So would I recommend the Odin, or the Odin Lite specifically? Well, yes and no. If you want a good device for Saturn, Nintendo 64, GameCube, Dreamcast, PSP, 3DS, or some PS2 and Wii, then yes, absolutely. The Odin Lite checks all those boxes. Problem is, in 5 months, when you get it, will there be a better ARM-based device capable of dethroning the new value king? I bet there will be, but only time will tell. Make sure to let me know if you have any questions regarding the Odin Lite in the comments below.